So a life in music is pretty well at its end. I've brought us right up to present, pretty much. There's not much really else to tell. Um, I met my current wife, Ginger. We built the studio. We have a home. We've worked this particular business together for 2 years of a pandemic. Everything came to a screeching halt, but I didn't, and I've managed to continue to make a living by doing what I'm doing right now and other things as well. But, depending on and counting on the online community to keep me running, and it has. And I don't want life and music to end because I think there's a lot left to be said. And so, these future episodes may become very interesting because what I'm going to do is talk about the things that I encounter in my life on a daily basis because of what I do and how they affect me. And I hope that these episodes moving forward, become little micro lessons for not only people who don't know much about the industry, but for the young people who are coming up in the industry and have a lot of questions. And some of them aren't young. Like, I talk to people all the time that are in their 30s and 40s and are wanting to get into music on a professional level, do a real recording, do touring, putting together a band, taking writing very seriously. It's a never-ending story. And so this week I feel compelled to shout out to a guy that's also on YouTube who I watch frequently, whose name is Rick Beato. Rick is a veteran. I never heard of this guy before I saw him on YouTube. I didn't know anything about him. And that doesn't surprise me because of what I'm about to tell you. Like, his resume is basically, he has lived in the belly of the beast, the industry, right, for his entire career. He's a tremendous musician. He's a tremendous technician of music. He knows more about music theory and how it works and how it applies to popular music than anybody I've ever seen. He appears to be a fairly good player. I don't know how good he really is, but he probably rocks. And he's a writer, so he's made his living off of writing songs, working with labels, working with management, working with the industry, publicity, distribution, radio. He's had his own label, I believe. He's produced for other labels. He has seen everything that you can imagine in this business. And I don't mean this because I really like the guy. I don't mean this to sound disrespectful, but because of what he's done in his life, from the outside, for me looking at him, he's the quintessential industry guy. He knows a lot about what makes hit records and what constitutes a successful career, and he agrees with me on all kinds of things, like, how auto-tune destroyed the music industry, and how MIDI destroyed the music industry. MIDI is an electronic. Basically, most of the records that are on the radio today have no real instruments on them. They're all computer-generated keyboard instruments. And like, he has all that same no bullshit kind of persona. But at the same time, he also has this kind of charming naivety about things outside the mainstream industry, right? And that's so typical of somebody who's worked in it as long as he has. I mean, you could put somebody like me or Brian Sutton or Jake Workman, or I suspect someone like Tommy Emmanuel in front of Rick, and Rick would be blown away. He wouldn't really know who they are, because he hasn't gone into that field. He's 100% traditional industry guy, and he's so much like every other person I've met who worked the industry as long as he has. And but he's a wonderful guy, and one of the things that he does that I love is he does these videos called "What Makes This Song Great." And basically what he does is he takes a hit song, sometimes obscure songs, and he deconstructs them live right on the video. He listens to them, he points out parts, he plays, he describes what the theory is behind, all the chord changes and the lyric choices. I mean, he completely deconstructs these things. And he does it for no money. He doesn't monetize these videos, so he doesn't allow advertisers on there. It's for educational purposes only, the fair use policies of YouTube, and it is a wonderful thing. And a couple of days ago, I was watching his channel, and he put a video up called, a little bit ago now, I Confronted the People Who Blocked Me. And what it was a rant against all these huge artists who took offense that he had used their songs in this deconstruction series, and that it wasn't fair use, it wasn't educational, it was copyright infringement and all this stuff, and he hadn't asked permission, and blah, 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 blah. And they had YouTube not only block the videos, but take them down, which they're allowed to do. It's their material, it's their intellectual property. So, but it's really dumb. Really dumb. It's probably the stupidest thing that I've ever seen people do, are these bands and labels and publishing houses that control, huge pop songs, denying use to people who are not hurting a thing. They're just not doing anything that's going to cause anybody any real financial or career damage, right? So I want to this is going to be the most important part of this video, because I want to give, you're talking about a life in music, I'm going to give you the complete breakdown of what actually happens when you write a song. Because a lot of people want to know this, and they ask me all the time, what should I do? What should I do? How do I do it? How do I protect myself? How do I protect my copyright? Should I publish? Should I do this? Should I do that? So I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you exactly how it works, and it's way more simple than you think it is. And nowadays, it's become even more simplified, because it's getting to the point where there's only 2 or 3 things in the entire planet, 2 or 3 entities that control the distribution of money to writers, right? And one of them is YouTube and Google, and they do a tremendously good job at it. So I'm going to tell you how it all works, and you'll be fascinated, I'm sure, by this, especially when I get to the closing part of this video and why I'm even making this. Yeah, you'll be fascinated by this, I'm sure. So, very simply put, as soon as you finish writing a song, like literally, and you've written all the lyrics down, and the melody's established, and you've played it 2 or 3 times in the room, your copyright is secure. That's it. It's your song. And the reason that is because anybody that comes along afterwards and tries to say it's not doesn't know when you wrote it. So they have to pick a date that's prior to your date. And then they have to have proof of some kind, either a lyric sheet or a recording or a video, or they have to have proof that they were playing that exact song prior to the date that you claim you wrote it. It's impossible to do, really. And for that reason, songs are not stolen. It just doesn't happen. It's really rare. The only time that these things kind of happen are when people accidentally plagiarize somebody else's song, and the original song owner goes, wait a second, that melody is 6 measures of my song exactly, which happened recently over the last 25 years, happened between Gordon Lightfoot and Whitney Houston. Her song, The Greatest Love of All, I think it was, had ripped off more than 6 measures of Lightfoot's If You Could Read My Mind. And he sued her and won. And it was unintentional. Nobody noticed it, but he did. And it was unintentional, so it was not a big battle. They settled out of court, and that was all good. And so that's how rare this really is. And now there's squabbles between people sometimes, co-writers, over who had the share of what. But that has even been erased because today, based upon what goes on in Nashville especially, and Los Angeles, if there's three guys in a room writing a song and one guy does the bulk of the work, it's still split 3 ways evenly. And that's the way it goes. And they put teams of people together to write songs because that's, as I said in my last episode, 2 heads are better than 1, 3 heads are better than 1, especially when you're trying to, when you're creating something like that. So anyhow, when you're done writing the song, the process is very simple. Each country has a writer's a song registry organization. Canada has SOCAN. The United States has BMI. Europe and UK each have their own things, right? And all you do is you join these societies, like SOCAN if you're Canadian. And when you write the song, you register the song with them by just telling them the title, the length of the song, how long it is, and when you wrote it, and who wrote it, your name as the composer and author, and boom, you're done. Your song is then registered with SOCAN. SOCAN has reciprocal agreements with every other society in the world, almost. And so what that does is it covers the most important thing. SOCAN charges people money to licenses, like every single place you've ever been, ever in Canada, that has Muzak playing in the PA in a mall or a movie theater or like anything. Any place that you've ever walked into that has live music, any festival that you've ever gone to, any place at all, every television station, every radio station, every single entity in Canada, and by extension, the world, that uses music in some way has to pay a fee to SOCAN and to their local societies and whatnot, right? And the fees are not huge, but they add up because there are millions of locations that use music on a daily basis, and they have to pay this license fee. So, for instance, a venue that presents live music has to submit 2% of the ticket price for every single artist that comes in there. 2% of the money collected at the door has to be paid to SOCAN. So basically what that does is it creates a huge pool of money. And then what SOCAN does is they monitor through all kinds of various means and surveys what music is being played on radio, television, movies, YouTube now, like different online things, and they even collect money for blank media. When you buy a blank thumb drive or a blank CD that's capable of carrying music, audio, there's a tax on it. That tax goes to SOCAN. So it's called a blank media tariff. So anyhow, it all goes in the pot. And so they use all these various means to figure out where your music is being played over broadcast is what it really is. And each time that happens, if they find you happening, like say 20 times in the East Coast, they extrapolate that to figure out what you'd be doing for the entire country. And then they pay you, and they pay you well. To give you an example, I've reported just my own live performances of my songs before. Like for a year, I've submitted all of my concert dates and my SOCAN sheets to show what I played at those shows. And from doing my own material, right, in a venue, in a festival, in a house concert, whatever. For doing my own material, I remember one Christmas I submitted for a year in November. I got a check for $12,000 from SOCAN. And in other various times in my life, like when Natalie recorded my material, I received thousands of dollars from her recording and being broadcast, right? So the great thing about that part of writing is that it never, ever goes away unless you just fall off the earth and are never played anywhere again. To this day, I am still receiving money from SOCAN every 4 months, and sometimes it's really good money, like it's a couple $1,000s. And the reason I bring this up is because I've done nothing in radio or TV or any of those things, but yet my little catalog of material is still earning every 4 months, around $1,000, sometimes more, depending on where my songs are being played, the length of the songs, blah, blah, blah. I will receive that money 50 years after my passing. It will still be paid to my estate. I think that's what it used to be, but it's ridiculous how the longevity of a single song. And if you look at a guy like me who's never had a hit, never had a gold record, never had any of those things, and I'm still receiving that kind of money, you need to think about what happens, what kind of checks are coming in to Paul McCartney. Or not even necessarily him, because he sold his catalog to Sony and Michael Jackson bought it. But, assuming he still owned all of it, imagine the money that he would get. Because it's a fact. They've done a survey in the past that says the top 10 radio play songs in the history, or artists, right? That list is terrifying. It's like the Beatles are played somewhere on the earth every 4 seconds. That's, it's ridiculous. And that list is populated by the Beatles, Billy Joel, Phil Collins, the Rolling Stones, even Lightfoot's on that list. One of his songs is being played somewhere in the world. Like every few minutes, every 10 or 12 minutes, his song's getting spun, and he's getting paid for it. So that's the immense power of writing one song and how easily it is to get paid by a writers' society for the number of times that it's broadcast to the public, right? I'll go a step further with that. I know personally a guy who wrote a song that spent, I'm not sure how many weeks at number one in the country charts. The song won a Grammy. And the first SOCAN payment, just the SOCAN payment on the song was nearly $300,000. That was just the first check. Just the first check. I know another guy in this industry who is world famous, and he didn't even really have that many number one songs himself. He's been covered a million times, but he at one point was earning $1 million a year from SOCAN alone. And so, so that's that part of songwriting and royalty payment and income for writers is pretty well untouchable. It's never going to go away as long as your songs are being broadcast, right? That's what's happening. As long as there's commercial radio and television and movies and live performances and free licensed music in music in venues and malls and dentist office and you're going to get paid forever. A lot of money if you had hit songs, right? So that's one type of royalty. The other kind of royalty is called a mechanical royalty. And it's called a mechanical royalty because it's when someone uses your material in a mechanical contrivance. So when it's physically produced on a CD or a record or a tape or a whatever, part of the sales of that device go to the writer. Right now, the royalty rate is about 9 cents for every song that you have on that device. So if somebody cut one of my songs on their CD and sold 1,000 copies, they'd owe me $90. That part of royalty payments right now are negligible because they say that people don't buy CDs anymore. I tend to disagree with that. I still sell tons of CDs, but it's a gray area. It's a gray area. How because the most that what people are making money from right now are still broadcast royalties, right? And so now let's talk about the new trend, which is streaming and online use of music. So there are royalties paid to writers, and they're very, very small. And a lot of major artists have complained about it. Well, I have a little bit of a take on that. Recently, Apple and a lot of the other major platforms have started to do what they call lossless audio, which means they're now streaming this stuff at 16 or 24-bit audio, which is still an electronic file. It's nothing like vinyl or listening to, I don't know. It's just not the same experience, but you got to think about something. When somebody streams something, they're usually not listening to it through good speakers or sitting in a room that's dedicated to listen to music in with, two really nice stereo speakers with an EQ and all the idea that music now is consumed in its purest form by people is it's a dead idea. I still do it because I own a recording studio. So I enjoy listening to music in high fidelity. I listen to vinyl, I listen to CDs, and I do it through really good speakers. And there's not very many of us left. I mean, there's enough, but there's not very many left that do that. So I question the value of somebody streaming music through a phone that's going to sound like shit, and they just stream it so they just want to hear the song, right? They're not getting the reason it's free is because it has no value. What value is there in being able to hear a song rendered electronically through a shitty device that doesn't even have stereo separation? You can't even hear what's in the left and right channels. You can't, the reason that people don't get paid a lot for streaming is because streaming ain't worth shit. That's why it doesn't pay. Now, mind you, Spotify and Apple Music and all these people, they're making billions of dollars on their advertising and their all this different stuff that they do. And off the $10 a month subscription, they're making billions of dollars. But so it could be said that they should share more of that wealth with the composers, and that's fine. But the idea that something coming to your phone over broadband through the air is worth the same amount as a piece of vinyl that has the original recording on it, you drop the needle in it, and you hear exactly what the artist and producer and engineer determined for you to hear. They're not the same thing at all. So mechanical royalties are getting less and less. But companies like YouTube are making sure people get paid for the use of their material. They have an excellent track record, an excellent infrastructure of, themselves, Google, companies like Easy Song Licensing, which you can assign your catalog to. They find that money and they pay the artists. And it's based upon, very simply, the amount of money that they get from selling advertisements on the video. So it's very fair. It's really well done. And so that side of the music industry, right? This idea that we're all selling physical material that we have to be paid for, it's gone. Get over it. Get over it. It doesn't happen anymore. If you want to make money off of selling your music physically, go back on the fucking road and sell records out of the back of the truck. That's where you're going to make your money. I'd rather go on the road and sell 1,000 CDs and make 20 grand, right? Than fight about whether Jeff Bezos is paying me enough royalties for some kid in Idaho to stream my song through his shitty Android phone that doesn't even sound like I intended it to sound. And it's in its background music of a pool party. There's no value in that. It's just letting people hear the music they want to hear. Why not just let them do that? We got lost along the way, I think, with all of this, because so much money was made by artists in the music industry over the, from 1955 basically to 1990. So much money, millions, billions of dollars. because the record labels controlled everything. They controlled everything. They told the masses what they wanted to hear. They forced shit down people's throat. They padded sales. They paid off radio stations. They did everything, every kind of corrupt bullshit that you could possibly imagine to just increase their bottom line. And many artists over the years were completely destroyed by that machinery. Destroyed. You know? Decimated financially. Careers over. Leaving labels owing them millions of dollars. I mean, it's just horrendous what happened to a lot of artists in the old pre-online traditional record industry thing, right? Why we want to go back to that system is beyond me. I don't ever want to see it again. I like the way things are right now because they're completely fair. The amount of work you put in is how much you get out. And I can make a living on YouTube and touring, limited touring and making records. I can make a very comfortable living doing exactly what I love to do. And so what is the point of, striving for something that's never going to last for most people? You're never going to find anybody, very, very seldom that's capable of changing the world with their music. They just ain't going to do it anymore. It's already all been done, right? It really has. It started with Robert Johnson, and then it went to Bill Haley, and then it went to Elvis, and then it went to the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and the Eagles and Lynyrd Skynyrd and you name it. All those bands, they all altered history and music and the way we see music and the way we consume music. That's not going to happen anymore. I'm sorry to tell you. I mean, we're all just pale copies of these people. Even in my line of work, there's never going to be another Bill Monroe. There's never going to be another Osborne Brothers. There's never going to be another Ralph Stanley, Tony Rice, Doc Watson. These people will never come again. Which means we're just rehashing everything, all the foundation that they laid. So we should be happy, I would think, guys like that are, not superstars like me, there's millions of us, we should be very happy that we can do what we love to do. And companies like Google and YouTube, Easy Song Licensing, and a bevy of others, CD Baby and all, there's so many good online sources now to make sure that you get paid a portion of the ad revenue that's being generated. It's golden time. I don't have to answer to anybody now as to what I'm doing or what I'm writing or what I'm presenting to my audience. I do whatever the fuck I want. And that's a freedom that was never afforded artists prior to 1990. Very few people in this industry ever sat down and said, this is what we're doing and that's that. They had to argue. They had to argue with engineers, managers, producers, labels, sometimes their own audience. They'd put out records that were completely rejected by their own audience and had to go back to do something else. Nowadays, it's like, I'm going to do what I do. And if people like it, they're going to hit subscribe. And if they don't, they won't. But YouTube's still going to sell a bunch of ads on this, and I'm going to get some money from it at the end of the month. What more do you want, If you put enough content out, damn. So that brings us back full circle back to Rick Beato. Rick's video that he put out about the people who were fighting him on YouTube mentioned ad nauseum about something that just actually blows my mind. Now you understand now, after everything I've told you, that here's the basic equation to keep in mind. If you've written a song like Hotel California that has been played on the radio like 2 million fucking times, at least, or probably more than that. Actually, it would be way more than that. You can just imagine the amount of money, and it's still being played on the radio every few seconds. It isn't every day, it's every few seconds. Somewhere in the world, Hotel California is being played on television, movie, radio, or broadcast through Muzak, or broadcast, and every time that happens, cha-ching. So you just think about that. If a guy like me, who gets almost no airplay, is still making about $8,000 a year off of broadcast, what do you think Hotel California makes? So, one of the things that Rick brought up and showed clips of, I believe, in that video was just not long ago, Don Henley went and testified before Congress, where he completely shit on this new system of how things are working. And he especially attacked YouTube and people like Rick Beato, that their songs were being used on YouTube, and they had to go in and block them and take them down at a rate of 200 times a day or whatever the hell it was. And this was some great offense, and he was losing millions of dollars and blah, 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 blah. Boy, Don Henley is full of shit. Don Henley is making so much money off of his catalog through broadcast royalties that it is obscene. Even if he's splitting the royalties with Glenn Fry's estate or a publisher or a label or whatever, he is a multi-fucking gazillionaire. A gazillionaire. And the other savage part about this thing is that the way things work on YouTube is very simple. YouTube is a very socially conscious, very legally fair-minded company. They're owned by Google. Google has an immense responsibility to the world because they're basically the archive of the combination of the combined human knowledge of all history is contained in Google. Like they've taken on a massive role in our lives. So they own YouTube, and the way that it works is that somebody plays my song on a YouTube video. Google has invented and continues to use the best song recognition software that has ever been made. And so if somebody sings one of my songs, that algorithm recognizes it immediately and puts it into the owner, which would be me. And I have it set up so that if somebody uses my material, I share the ad revenue with the person. Because I think that's fair. You know why? Because guess what? Somebody thought enough of my song to cut it and put it on a video. And all of their friends and subscribers are now hearing my song. How else could that have possibly happened? And how else could you possibly put a song somewhere that has an audience continually of 1 billion people? Think about that for a second. You put out a record, you're only going to reach the people that hear a single from the radio or come to see you live. We're talking about a few 100,000, maybe 1 million people will go buy a record and love the song and blah, blah, blah. YouTube has a continual audience of 1 billion people. Think about that. How much is that worth? Well, it's worth a ton. Because there has never been a way to reach that much of the world's population by hitting an upload button on your phone. And you have the potential through YouTube to create massive followings. Our subscribers have nearly quadrupled in 19, 20 months, right? We started out with 4,000. We're up around 18,000 now. And please subscribe. Please. If you haven't subscribed and you watch me, that's the scary thing. YouTube, if there's 20,000 people watching you, that's less than 20, or if there's 20,000 subscribed, it means that that's only 20% of the people who are actually watching you. Most people who watch don't subscribe, which is fine, but it still helps, and it's free to everybody who watches. Everything about this process is free to the consumer, to the guy who's uploading, but yet YouTube goes out and sells advertising money and shares the wealth with all the people who are involved. What the hell else do you want? Like, when Don Henley was spouting off about all this vitriol about online usage, like, his songs are 50 years old, and they're not in the mainstream anymore, but they're still being played, like I said, every few minutes. They're still not in the mainstream. And every time, in my opinion, when somebody cuts a song like that, a legacy song like that, it's a tribute to him. It's a tribute to what that band did and achieved. And it may well put that song in the headlights of a whole new generation of people, which then again contributes more usage, more listening, more downloading, more requests to radio stations, possibly people going out and buying box set CDs, It's a money-making machine when you're at Don Henley's level. And for him to come out and crap on Rick and everybody else that's out here doing this it's obscene. It's completely obscene. The man sitting in a multi-million-dollar mansion collecting royalties for doing absolutely fucking nothing. And he's going to come out here and go to Congress, of all things, and try to shut down what we're all doing out here. Everyone's making money. Everyone's being entertained. And here's the thing. I didn't finish my first thought. When YouTube finds someone's song, they notify them. And the copyright holder has a choice. This is what Mr. Henley didn't bother telling anybody. They have a choice. The YouTube says, do you want to all of the ad royalties for this? You're the copyright holder. Or would you like to share the royalties with the creator of the video? The copyright holder has the choice to say, nope, I want all the royalties. Good, done. And YouTube demonetizes your video and gives all the money to the owner of the song. That's never happened to me. I've used all kinds of cover songs, and I've always had the same thing happen. YouTube goes, you've used this song owned by blah. The video's still making money, and you're still making money, but you're splitting it with the copyright holder. Hardly ever does anybody go, no, I want all of it, and I get demonetized. And that's fine. It's their material. It's their intellectual property. They're allowed to do that. And I'm fully behind them. I don't choose to do that with my own material, but if they want to, it's their game. Let them do it. And Mr. Henley, in his diatribe, didn't talk about that. Instead, he talked about having to get these videos taken down. Why would you do that? Why would you do that? Why would you refuse free money you weren't expecting to even get? And you know what it comes down to? It comes down to the arrogance of certain artists in the history of our music that are still living, who are pissed off because they weren't asked permission before it was used, which used to be the protocol. Guess what? Protocols change. People change, industries change, consumption of music changes. That's why they're pissed off. They're pissed off because someone didn't come to their door to kiss their ass and ask to use their material. And that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. You know, I just can't get my head around any of that. If somebody uses my song and I didn't know it was being used and YouTube contacts me and says, we just made money off your song, I'm going to be happy as a pig in shit. And so should Don Henley. Why would he turn money down? Just because somebody didn't ask his permission first, just because maybe the money's not as big as a mechanical royalty. It ain't that 9 cents per unit idea that somebody is selling his music. Nobody's selling his music. That's the thing about online music. And it has to be said, nobody owns the end product anymore, right? That's the deal. When you stream a song, you don't own it. You don't own that recording. There's no need of paying a mechanical royalty when nothing has changed hands. All that's happened is someone who loves you and your music has listened to you. Where's the rocket science in that? You know, it's not brain surgery. It's nothing's changed hands. So the person that listens to it can't really own it. They can download a poor copy of it, but they can't own a master recording of it like you used to buy. So we've got to get used to how things are working. And people like Henley and everybody else like him who has complained and bitched and moaned, they need to get on the bus, man. They need to get on the bus with the rest of us and start sharing royalties. He's already made so more money. Listen, you could finance a small company, a small country. You could finance a nation, a small nation, with just 1 year of Don Henley's broadcast royalties. I guarantee it. So he needs to get on the bus. We all need to start working together and put away this idea that the music industry is some great gated community where the kings are up there and the rest of us are just peasants down below, including other artists, right? We need to get rid of that. We need to all come at this on an even playing field. Just like I've said, what you put in is what you should get out. If you put out good content and people like to watch it, you'll get paid. You'll sell records still. You'll sell CDs. You'll sell tickets at live shows. If you put out shit, you won't get anything. It's too bad. If you suck, well, you're not going to make any money. And see, the problem with that concept is that used to be record labels would put people out that kind of sucked and they still made money because the label was behind them. They had publicists, they had payola, they had all these things that sometimes forced the masses to buy something that wasn't really that good. Now it's not like that. Now it's you put something out that's good and consumable and people like it, you're going to get money from it. And obviously, gods of music history like Henley and all these other acts that we all love, they got no worries. Their position in the industry and in music history is completely cemented forever. Hotel California, Peaceful Easy Feeling, Lion Eyes, Witchy Woman. I could list so many songs that they had that were just unbelievable. And that's just one band, right? There's 50 bands or more probably that created music that will never leave our society. It'll be part of our societal vocabulary until the end of time. I really believe that. I believe that they'll still be playing Elvis 200 years from now if we're still alive here. And we have to start getting involved, all of us, in making sure that that we all come into this thing with open minds, open hearts, even playing field. Let everybody in, and let YouTube and all these other companies do their jobs, which is basically selling advertisement to cause people to consume. That's the basis of our society now. So we might as well let music into that arena and let it work for us. Don't fight over it. You don't go to Congress and complain that some guy in Bozeman, Montana cut your song and put it up without your permission. He's helping maintain your legacy. And that's what I think guys like Rick Beato are doing. He's putting forth work on YouTube that is educating millions of people. He has, I don't know how many subscribers he has, but it's ridiculous. And you know what, Rick? I'm going to tell you something. You should start looking outside pop music. You could do a lot of good for the people that are out doing, acoustic, folk, songwriters, whatever. Guys like me, guys like anybody. There's thousands and thousands of us who are not going to fight you over YouTube. We're not going to be blocking your videos. And there's an untapped well of musicians currently working in the world right now who deserve the kind of attention that you give them and that other content creators give music, right? Go there once in a while, show what can be done without the aid of the industry and the machinery that you worked in your whole life. Because there's so much out there. And we would appreciate, having you in our family. And I know I watch you all the time. Obviously millions of people do. So there you go. There's my rant. And there's my, I know there's a lot of stuff in this video, in this episode, that people probably didn't know. Matter of fact, I know they don't know, because I get asked these questions continually by people. What do I do? How do I do? Blah, blah, blah. And on an ending note, let's just talk about publishing for a second. Publishing pretty well is useless now too, because publishing is to protect yourself against labels and whatnot who want to own the mechanical royalties of your music. Well, we all know that mechanical royalties aren't really paying much anymore. So publishing, nobody publishes. We just self-publish. I write my songs now, and I don't even list my publishing company. Publishing companies are just administrators of a catalog. They keep track of what's being used and blah, blah, blah. Well, you don't need that anymore, because YouTube and Google and all these different entities online are doing it for us, and they're making sure the money's coming in. So there you go. I hope that this was interesting. I mean, it certainly is. It's a passionate topic for me, I can tell you that much, because, I've been 40 years in this business, and I've seen all of it myself, and I just want people to get along. I just want people to be able to make their music to the best of their ability and put it in front of an audience that will or won't reject them. I think everybody has an audience. So it's good work in, good money out. That's it. And it puts everybody on an even scale. And it's the way it should be. And it never was before this. It really wasn't. There was a lot of great, talented people that I've known in my lifetime that should have been superstars, but they never made it because they couldn't get inside the machine. And those days are over now. And I'm glad about that. I can't help it. It might be a bit perverse to look at the bulk of the industry and see it just collapsing and eating its own ass like a snake. I don't care. I don't give a shit. And I don't give a shit about some guy, anybody who's sitting on millions of dollars complaining about Rick Beato doing an instructional, educational video on one of their hit songs that's already made millions of dollars. I just can't make myself care about that. So there you go. Love to you all. That's all I can say. And love to Rick Beato. He's a cool dude. Go watch him. You might learn a few things.